welcome to Out of the Box Radio with me, your host, Christine Blasdale. Out of the Box Radio is a weekly podcast of audible ear candy dedicated to bringing a fresh perspective on this thing that we call life. And each and every week, we're going to be diving into the topics that matter most with lively conversations on issues such as health, wellness, and transformational healing, all with the goal of creating a better world and becoming a happier human being. I will be your tour guide for this epic adventure, and each and every week, we're going to be embarking on a journey with the ultimate goal being transformation to our highest potential. And now, let's get out of the box. Hello everyone, I'm Christine Blasdale. Today's program is a very special one in the fact that April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. This program is dedicated to all of the victims of sexual assault and rape. Now let's begin with the program. Victoria Valentino was a classically trained actress who, in the 60s, was accepted by Playboy to be their centerfold. She became Miss September 1963. She inadvertently became a famous pinup in a magazine she'd never heard of, nor ever aspired to be in. But her husband was very abusive after she became pregnant and delivered their son. So, after they separated, Victoria and her son were quite unique at that time in history. A single white mother and a brown toddler with a big 60s afro during a time of political turmoil and social activism. Together they marched in the streets against Vietnam. Together they marched in the streets for civil rights and women's rights. They were part of the hippie movement of the Summer of Love in 1967. And while she was working as a bunny in the first Playboy Club on the Sunset Strip in 1965, her heart and her passions were leading her elsewhere. She continually struggled with her inner conflict of being a celebrity sex object and her determination to be a liberated woman respected for her talents and intellect. Eventually, she left Playboy and received a recording contract with Capitol Records. At the beginning of the party that was being given in her honor to celebrate the successful negotiation of the contract, her son, who had just turned 6 years old, drowned in her music attorney's swimming pool. Her life, as she knew it, had ended. Soon after, she went through a very serious depression and even considered suicide. Her son had been her life. If life couldn't be more unbearable, shortly after the loss of her only son, she was drugged and raped by Bill Cosby, the last straw broken on the back of an already broken woman. That's when she walked away from all of it. From the contract, Los Angeles, her family, all of it, to embark on a healing odyssey to reclaim her forgotten self. Eventually, she returned to college at 39 and became a registered nurse, graduating with honors at 42, specializing in hospice work, bereavement, and becoming a privileged companion with the dying. On the 40th anniversary, she returned to the world of Playboy as they requested, going out on multiple autograph shows all over the world for several years. She discovered that while she had become somewhat of an icon in Playboy history, which once again posed a dilemma, the conflict of becoming famous for her body parts and objectified versus being an empowered, self-actualized woman, mother, grandmother, RN, home hospice case manager, and guiding counselor for the dying and their families. She broke her silence and went public on November 22nd, 2014, on the pages of the Washington Post about her rape experience with Cosby after stuffing it in for 46 years. Since then, she has been one of the main go-to rape survivors for multiple news media interviews and has been featured frequently on CNN, Dr. Phil, MSNBC, NBC Dateline, A&E, Australia's TV7 network, as well as many, many others. But this is where her life takes an even bigger leap. She is currently working to abolish the statute of limitations on rape and sexual assault in California. She is a member of PAVE Hollywood, promoting awareness, victim empowerment, working towards changing the rape culture in the entertainment industry and in our society, and helping women find their voices and stand in their truth and be silent no more. And she is my hero. It is my honor to have on Out of the Box Radio Victoria Valentino, who is I can't even begin to tell you how how much I honor your strength, Victoria, and I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine, for having me, and that was quite an introduction. Thank you.
If we can, let's start off. Let's start off where we're at right now. The work that you are doing for women. This is Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
Yes, it is.
Please, for our listeners, let them know what this month and what it means to you, and the importance of people being aware of what's going on.
Well, I think that because so many of us have now come out of the closet, as it were, and we are speaking out. A few of us were right in the beginning, in the end of 2014, talking about it, and then it empowered other women to come forward and find their voice and stand in their truth and not be ashamed and not feel that they were going to be blamed, even though God knows we've got the dirty-minded people who seem to sit around behind the scenes looking for anybody that they can vent their hostility on. And so we are targets of a lot of that at this point. But I choose not to read that stuff. I hear about it peripherally, but I'm focused. And so many of us are focused on the end goal, which is to change rape culture in our society. And the only way we can do that, Christine, is to speak out. The stats are just unbelievable. I mean, 1 in 4 women will be raped. 1 in 4 rapists will be prosecuted only if the victim is a female. But if the victim is a male, the prosecution rate goes up to almost 75% or higher. Oh. Now, what does that tell you about the worth of a woman in today's society? Oh. You see, we're still dealing with that. We're still dealing with that all the time. And so consequently, the fact that we are speaking out, we are taking a stand and not just swallowing it and taking it as part of what it is, just nothing we can do about it. We have to change the conversation, and it is changing the conversation. And Sexual Assault Awareness Month, it should be every month, not just 1 month. It should be talked about more and more all the time because, it's all the little innuendos, the little fingers creeping on your arm, that are supposed to be not really intimidating, but they are because there's an entitlement, that male entitlement that you can be touched without your consent. There is that entitlement that you're just property or you're just an object, you're a thing. And we have to raise awareness about that.
You had mentioned a few statistics, and I had pulled up from the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network just some staggering statistics. If this doesn't make people stop and think, they say that 44% of victims are under the age of 18, 80% are under the age of 30, and that every 107 seconds, another American is sexually assaulted. Each year, there are about 293,000 victims of sexual assault. And I think that number is actually much lower than what is actually happening because those are reported cases. 68% of sexual assaults are not reported to the police. There you go. And 98%, if this doesn't make people absolutely livid and outraged, 98% of rapists will never spend 1 day in jail.
Exactly. And this calls to attention the fact that silence is the greatest, or maybe second greatest, weapon that a rapist has against his victims. Because of the fear, the humiliation, the re-victimization of the victim. Once she goes public or once she speaks out or goes to the police, it always gets turned around. It's like, what are you wearing? And, why did you even go out with that person? Or who do you think you are speaking against this respected member of society? It's quite often somebody that is in the public trust. It's not just the Bill Cosbys, but it's a lot of the Bill Cosbys. It's the people with the power, the money, the influence, the public respect who, ingratiate themselves with the public, with the families of the victim, so that they are trusted, and, the grooming process. And then that's when they do their dirty deeds.
And that's a large part of the violence. I'll say it, of the violence against the woman, against the victim, because here's another statistic from the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. Approximately 4/5 of assaults are committed by someone known to the victim. Almost half, 50% of rapists are a friend or acquaintance, and that is something that a lot of people are not aware of. The sexual assault and the rape, almost 50% are friends or acquaintances, somebody that they know. Now, in your case, take us back, if you will, and because this is, and like you said, they always are going to make the victim seem like, well, what were you wearing? You must have asked for it. Why did you go out with the person for a drink? You must have known. You must have led him on, because this poor man couldn't, and look at you, you're beautiful. That's the other thing, Victoria. Let me tell you something. When women, especially women who are beautiful, attractive, when they are attacked, when they are raped, it is this sick culture that says, well, she's beautiful, I can't blame the guy, right?
Well, and then there's the additional thing of, men have no self-control.
Talk about, please, if you may. Well, first of all, talk if you feel comfortable. Obviously, if you feel comfortable talking about the encounter that you had with Bill Cosby. Did you had worked with him, or you had known him?
Well, no, because I was a bunny. We all knew these guys, the comedians, the singers, and so they were our buddies. After we get off work, we'd go over across the street to a place called Cyrano's. And everybody had breakfast and everybody went home, because we all had to get up and go back and do the same thing the next day. So we had established a level of trust.
Yeah.
And my training bunny, who's been like my dear friend for 51 years, we raised our kids together. We both had biracial children. She really reached out to me because she was married and I was single. And after my son died, actually, I was just so lost, and my mother was very narcissistic. And, what are you crying over? Move on, throw your shoulders back, chin up, and that's it, And so Francesca reached out to me, and at the time, my grandmother, everybody, all the key members, the people who were the pillars of my personal temple, died within 4 months. My grandmother, my great aunt, who was, my soulmate, a poetess, a old maid school teacher for 48 years, and same birthday as my son. They're buried side by side. My other favorite auntie, my favorite uncle, my babysitter had a heart attack in the garage a month before my son died. The neighborhood dog killed the cat and the guinea pig, it was just like... It was like this death cluster. And I had never, at 26 years old, I had never been to a funeral. I'd never seen a dead body. But to see my son at the bottom of the swimming pool face down, we'd just gotten his wardrobe for first grade. Oh. He'd gotten his first bell bottoms, and his Nehru jacket. And so it was all just, my head was spinning, and I was supposed to be going into the studio to record, and I would go in there, the band had been in, laid their tracks, and I would be standing there with the headphones on, and I'd open my mouth, and it was like nothing came out. It was just, I was hollow. It's like somebody took a a dull knife and eviscerated me. You know, I felt incapable of functioning. Francesca, God bless her, would take me by the arm. You know, she would arrange people to take me places because I couldn't drive. You know, it's just non-functional. So she, I just kind of couldn't. I was running out of front money for my contract with Capitol, and I needed work, and I was already a Screen Actors Guild member. And she said, I know Bill Cosby from the club. She said, let me hook you up, get you an interview with him, and maybe he can, get you a part on the show. And I said, oh, fabulous. He was doing I Spy at that time. And I said, okay, I think I can handle speaking lines, And so she did. And I don't even remember how I got to the studio. I don't remember how I left. I don't know, was I driving? Was somebody must have been driving me because I was incapable of doing it at the time. And I was interviewed in his trailer by him, and Franny said, hey, take Tony's 8x10. I have it hanging and framed in my living room, where his eyes are always on me because he's looking directly into the lens, and it makes me a good girl. He's my conscience all the time. And so I took it and I handed it to Cosby and told him the story, and that I was an actress and I was hoping I could get an audition. And he sat there like a piece of cardboard, like a cardboard cutout of a human being. There was like no human reaction to that. Nothing.
Wow.
It was the most bizarre thing. Usually you can see in somebody's eyes that they're moved, even if they don't say words, but nothing from him. It was like a blank. And finally, it became very obvious that I was not going to be getting an audition. And I just figured it was my fault. I'm damaged goods at this point. Who's going to invest their time or, take a risk on me, as an actress, because I was incapable of really functioning at all. So I just got up, I left. I never expected to hear from him or a casting director on his show or anything, ever again. And so I was living, after my grandmother died, my uncle and my mother owned her house in West Hollywood. So I moved in with a boyfriend and two friends of his, an actress by the name of Meg Foster and her boyfriend, Eric. And so she liked to go over to the Cafe Figaro, which was then on Melrose and Doheny. And apparently Cosby was a part owner. I didn't know that at the time, but she liked to go over there, and we'd go over around 4 o'clock, and they had great French onion soup, and you'd get a basket of hot bread, and we'd scrape enough money together to share a small carafe of red wine. And so one day I was having one of my really, 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 really bad days. It's sort of like a horse kicks you in the gut, and you're doubled over and you just can't get your breath, and, the tears come and you're just in a mess. And Sybil, why don't we go over to the Fig and do our thing? And I said, okay. But my head was down and, just really I just couldn't stop the tears. And maybe it was about 3 months after my son died. He died September 6th, 1969. And anyway, I was just sitting there not being great company, and I don't know whether I think she went to the ladies or something and came back, and I just have this kind of vague memory. As I talk about it, things start coming back that I'd forgotten, that sort of pushed it all to the back, And so he suggested to her that I would benefit from going to this Finnish steam bath, I think, down on Santa Monica, and and getting a massage because I was in such bad shape. And so he was coming across as being very powerfully compassionate, which made me question whether it had just been my misperception about him, and you kind of think, well, people process things differently, maybe I just didn't get it, and maybe I misjudged him. And so he gave Meg his private telephone number and said he would treat us and that she should take me there. And both of us go to the steam room, get a massage, and then we would go back to the house. And he said he would send his driver over to pick us up and take us to dinner. And that seemed like a great idea. I thought, wow, that was really nice, And I wasn't really in the mood, but there was that element of, we're both actresses, maybe this is going to be a good thing. I was inconsolable. I never could see that there was going to ever be anything that would make me feel better. Yeah. I thought I was going to be stuck with this visceral pain the rest of my life. I had no previous experience of that kind of thing, obviously. So, it was, I would have just as soon, frankly, have gone home to Grandma's and curled up in my bed. Yeah. The effort of going out at all at that point was like more than I really wanted to do, but I thought, well, she's really all excited about it, let's do it, so I kind of went, and I don't even remember if I got a massage or not. I think it just didn't feel like it. So at the end, I said, so are you going to call him? And she went, oh, yeah. So she called, and we went back to my grandmother's house. We got dressed, and his car came and took us to a restaurant called Sneaky Pete's. It was kind of a steakhouse that was sort of new and the popular place on the Strip. I think it was sort of near the Whiskey A Go-Go. The car pulled into the parking lot, and he came and greeted us and took us down into the restaurant, and we sat in kind of a banquet fashion, linear. He was to her left and she was to my left. So I wasn't even sitting next to him. And they were busy talking, and she was a vegetarian, so a lot of the conversation was what was she going to eat in a steakhouse. And, there was just a lot of banter and jokes, and it became really clear that they were the two people who were having the conversation, and I was the tag along. And so I was just sitting there, and he ordered wine, and there was a glass of red wine, I remember, and I don't even remember what I ordered. I had no idea. I think I just sat there and kind of rearranged the food on my plate. And he was trying to charm her, really. And I was being a wet blanket. And finally, he put a pill down next to both of our wine glasses and said, here, why don't you take this? This will make you feel better. And he said, it'll make us all feel better. So that kind of made me feel like it was, in some weird way, my responsibility to start feeling better so I didn't bring everybody else down, Mm-hmm. And I would never have taken anything that I thought would have brought me down further. In those days, all of the doctors for Playboy, they weren't for Playboy, but they were the doctors that the bunnies would go to for birth control pills and diet pills so we could stay in our bunny costumes. So I just sort of assumed it was something that would bring me up. And I willingly took it, so I, think there was a lot of guilt in me about taking something voluntarily that ultimately made me completely sedated. And the same thing happened to her. I mean, the two of us were just, starting to get slurry, and he reached over and put another one in her mouth. Oh. Yeah, and so it became obvious that we couldn't sit up straight anymore, and I think he wanted to get us out of there so he wouldn't be publicly embarrassed. Or maybe he'd just gotten us to the right place. I don't know. But I just said, I really want to go home now. I was beginning to feel sick to my stomach, and, I was beginning to get dizzy, and I couldn't talk, and I couldn't hold my head up. And so he said, I'll take you home. And we went back up to the parking lot, and his car and driver were gone. And I remember saying something about, well, where's your car? And he said, oh, he had something else he had to do. I'll drive. Well, my grandmother's house wasn't very far, actually, from the Strip. It was a house my great-great-uncle built way back when there was nothing but a meadow and a footpath to that house from Sunset Boulevard. It was on Genesee between Fountain and DeLongpre. Still there. So all of it, so, it didn't seem like it was a big deal. He would drive us to my grandmother's house. Suddenly, instead of going on the flatlands, below Sunset Boulevard, it's like we're winding. I'm sitting in the back, she's sitting in the front with him, and it's like, we're going around curves and we're going up, and I was just spending my entire time just trying to control myself so that I wouldn't vomit in this big star's car, right? That would have been the ultimate
right
nasty, And so it was bad, It was really bad. And then all of a sudden the car came to a halt, and I thought, oh God, we're home. Except what didn't connect was we were pointing upwards. The car was on an incline. And I opened my eyes, and we're at the curb in front of some little townhouse, graystone, sort of vintage. And I was wondering why we were there, and she was wondering why she was there. And he said, "Oh, I want to show Meg my awards and all of this stuff." And I thought, well, maybe I must have gone out and they were having this conversation and came to some kind of agreement about that. And for a minute, I thought, well, I'll just sit in the car and wait, and then she'll come back and we can go home. And then he opened my car door, and I started feeling, again, like the wet blanket. I guess I better go and be a good sport and go along instead of just sitting here and being a deadbeat in the back of the car. So we went in, got a little in the elevator, went up to the second floor, walked in, and it was clearly a non-working office. It was like it sort of looked like a very large walk-in closet, really, with two little love seats and a little writing desk and a fake French provincial phone and a little table lamp. And she walked over to one of them and sat down and then just keeled over and passed out. And I sat down on the one right opposite the front door and put my head back on the back of the love seat, and just continued to try to get myself from spinning, and all of a sudden everything became really, really silent, and I thought, did they leave me? And then, I had this random thought of maybe they had something going on and, had slipped off into some bedroom or something. I didn't know, or, whether I just didn't know what happened. And I opened my eyes and looked around to see if I was alone or not. And she was completely passed out on the love seat, and he was sitting right next to her, looking down on her like a hawk getting ready to pounce on a little mouse. And it became very, very obvious what he was planning on doing. And, and then there was this growing bulge in his pants. And I felt very protective of her, I felt like I was already pretty much the destroyed person. So my focus was trying to distract him and get him away from her, so he wouldn't continue on and do what it was obvious that he was planning on doing while she was completely out. So I just kept reaching over the arm of the love seat. You know, my daughter kept telling me, "Ma, don't make that sound." But that was exactly the sound, you know, the thoughts were kind of in my brain, but I couldn't make them connect with my tongue. You know, I was, you know, trying to talk, and he just ignored me. And then he started getting this really annoyed look on his face because I wouldn't leave him alone. And, you know, just kept going and kind of reaching for him, felt like Frankenstein, you know. And then finally he got up and walked over towards me, and I stood up and started to lose my balance and grabbed onto him, and then he pulled me down to my knees and sat down on such a fly, and, you know, the rest is history. It was not pleasant. Somebody had the audacity to ask me, "Well, didn't you say, what did you say?"
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah. I mean, if I hadn't been so pissed off, and
you were
it would have
drugged.
been amusing. I mean, you know, these are the guy correspondents who ask you these questions.
God.
You know, what did I say?
You were drugged. You were drugged out of your mind.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You know. And then he got up and, you know, flipped me over, and I don't even know if he, you know, completed his task. I don't even remember. And then he walked out. And just before he opened the door, and he's like in the door, and he's getting ready to walk out, and I'm going, how is it home, you know? And he just looked at me, didn't look at me. He looked
through you
in the direction of this French provincial phone and said, "Call a cab," very disdainfully.
Oh, God.
And then walked out, closed the door. And I staggered over to Meg, and I shook her, and we got to get out of here. And we didn't know, you know, where we were. How could we call a cab?
Right.
You know, we had no idea where to call the cab to. So, she said, "Well, maybe if we call home, Eric can figure out how to get us," because we were in no condition to figure anything out. And we went to pick up the phone. There was no dial tone. So she got down on her hands and knees thinking, well, maybe the cord is unplugged from the wall. And she's like underneath the desk trying to plug it in. Well, there was no jack. It was a prop phone. The cord was cut. There was no jack.
Your minds must have just been absolutely. You must have been in absolute panic at that point too.
We were utterly panicked. I mean, we staggered out of there trying to figure out what we were going to do. We went to the elevator, and then we panicked thinking, oh my God, what if the door of the elevator opens and he's standing there in the elevator coming back?
Yeah.
You know? So we staggered down the stairs and out into the street, and we were up in the hills. And we were trying to figure out where we were, but we figured if we ran downhill sooner or later, you know, we'd find something recognizable. And so and she was running ahead of me, and she said, oh, we're behind the Chateau Marmont. And then she saw a cab running out, and we were both back east kids, you know, so she ran out in the street like New York and hailed the cab. I was so shocked because I didn't think you could do things like that in L.A., and we didn't even have any money. So we got in the cab, and fortunately her boyfriend was there, and we were able to get the car. You know, he paid for the cab, and we ran in, and I don't know what came out of our mouths. We're blah, 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 you know, telling them what happened. They went off to their bedroom, and I went off to my bedroom. Not terribly long after that, I really was flipping out and sitting on the floor in my grandma's back bedroom, which had been my bedroom as a baby, and tried to cut my wrists with her dull antique sewing scissors. Obviously, I didn't really do it. It must have been just more of this symbolic thing more than anything else, but I was just going, just freaking out. My boyfriend came home. He was not happy with that. I think he walked out after that. He did slap me in the face, I remember. Shake me out of it, the old 1940s movie solution to everything. So it wasn't long after that I just I left LA. I lived in a dirt floored garage in Topanga Canyon for about 9 months under it at night. It was a rough year. Very rough year. Wandered up in the hills with the dog. Just kind of feeling like Ophelia, just picking wild sage and just wandering. It was rough.
Victoria,
yeah.
Let's move forward now to 2014, 2015. When did you decide to come forward? Was it when you heard others, their claims about Bill Cosby being this serial rapist, that you decided to come forward?
There were opportunities 10 years ago which I ignored because I couldn't deal with it. When Andrea Constant first came out, I didn't want to know about it. There was a moment where I thought I should lend my support, but I couldn't. And then his son died, and I thought, aha, karma. Then November 21st, 2014, I was logging on to check my email at night before I went to bed, and I saw a thing about Barbara Bowman talking about how she had tried to be believed for all these years and nobody believed her. And I still didn't want to talk about it. I still didn't want to read her story. I just read like the first couple of paragraphs and then I pushed it to the side. And then all of a sudden I saw this thing on Yahoo about Hannibal Buress making a joke about it in his stand-up routine in Philadelphia. And this little red rocket just went off from somewhere deep inside my gut up and exploded in my brain. I couldn't believe that a woman would not be believed, yet a man making a joke about it.
Yeah.
Suddenly everybody believes him. It goes viral. So I went crazy. I started going, who can I talk to? Who can I talk to? And I thought, okay, I looked up People magazine because I used to know a guy who was a correspondent for them. And I thought maybe I can, and I put in the contact us, and I said, Survivor, or, well, I didn't say Survivor. We weren't talking that way at that time. I was drugged and raped by Bill Cosby in 1969. And never heard from him. Went to bed and I couldn't sleep. It was just, always just under the surface. And I woke up in the morning, went back to the computer. I went to the story of Barbara Bowman. I said, who did she talk to? And I saw that it was the Washington Post. So I went on their website and I'm going, where's the contact us thing, And I wrote, I was drugged and raped by Bill Cosby in 1969, never expecting to hear from them. I never heard back from People magazine. All of a sudden, within the hour, Adam Kushner called me. They tried to vet me. Meg Foster refused to answer any of their calls, their messages. Her agent came out and said, we have chosen not to discuss this issue. Mm-hmm. So I went, okay, so she threw me under the bus. I had talked to her once after I left LA in 81, catching up over the phone. Everything was fine until I brought up that evening. She shut me down. Don't be negative. Don't be negative. He's a lovely person.
Wow.
That was,
wow.
Shut me down. We never spoke again after that. I went, wow. Wow. So from then on out, it's been kind of a media roller coaster. And I am not with Gloria Allred, so therefore I get to speak to whomever I choose to speak to. My attorney is in Chicago, and he trusts me, but because of the statute of limitations, my statute of limitations are so long gone that, there is, first of all, I never contacted any of the press because I was looking for any financial compensation. That needs to be said. I wanted to lend my voice to the other women who are being invalidated and confirm that, in fact, this man is a predator. He is a rapist. This is his pattern. He drugs you, he rapes you, and, but first he grooms you.
Well, he gets your trust. He gains your trust.
Gains your trust. I never thought for a minute that I had anything to worry about from him.
Of course.
He wasn't even interested in me.
What a pig. I'm sorry.
And I certainly wasn't interested in him. I've never thought he was an attractive person in any way. And now, definitely not. Poor man.
I'm sure that there's probably hundreds of women who have not come forward over this long span of his career and his power. But how many that you know of have come out over the course of this time, the last few years?
59.
Jesus.
And I know personally 2 others who are still afraid to come out publicly. And I know their stories. I know them personally, and I know of, through one of the other survivors, 8 more who don't want to talk about it, who don't want to do anything because of their husbands, their children. Nobody knew they were bunnies. Nobody knew they had anything happen to them ever. And so they're afraid to come out. So you have to imagine that if, these are the numbers, and you're looking at over a 50-year span, and he has, started perfecting his drugging. It's new combos, his new cocktails, whatever he was, perfecting as time went on, that accomplished what he needed to have accomplished, which was to have a woman unconscious. It's a disorder called somnophilia. It's not necrophilia. They call it Sleeping Beauty syndrome. And they have to have the woman unconscious.
Well, he has to have the woman unconscious because he has to rape them, and they're not willing participants. He is a violent predator.
Exactly.
He is a violent predator.
I mean, there are some of us who actually, to this day, after decades, still have physical damage that they're living with as a result. Not to mention the PTSD. And since we've all come out, we've all had to deal with, this excavation of all of the damaging artifacts that we have locked safely away in a dark little room, and moved on with our lives in order to survive it.
So you relive it. Now, you relive you relive that moment over and over again. And obviously, and even in this conversation, I know that you have to relive that moment, but at the same time, what can we do to, what is he ever going to be held accountable? This man should be rotting in jail right now.
Well, yeah. I don't know what's going to happen. We're going to have to trust the judge at this point. He is involved in a criminal trial because because of all of us speaking out, there has been a new body of evidence to support Andrea Constant's case from 10 years ago. And her statute of limitations was coming up in Pennsylvania. And so the DA in Philadelphia, Castro, was the incumbent. He lost the election because he did not prosecute Cosby. And the new DA, whose name I'm blanking on, won the election because he used the fact that Castro did not prosecute Cosby. And he came out strong against sexual assault, rape, and all of that. So the judge, they reopened the case, and that was why he was arrested. He's out on $1 million bail. So he was supposed to start the trial, I think it was March 8th. He got that postponed. But all the attorneys are trying to, just play that game, postpone, delay, stonewall. So that's what's going, that's the ping pong game right now. So we will see what happens, but now Andrea Constand has all of us saying, hey, there is a thread of continuity here in the pattern of behavior. He's a psychopath. He's a sociopath. I mean, I recognize this disorder very, very clearly. I mean, it is not a mystery to me.
No, you're right. He's a psychopathic serial rapist.
Yes, he is. And he is most likely the most prolific serial rapist of the 20th century. He has been able to afford, because he's worth about $500 million, to be able to pay for this hermetically sealed cocoon of silence around him.
Yes.
And pay people off.
Oh.
I've had stories. People come out of the woodwork since I broke my silence. My story came out on the 22nd of November in the Washington Post. From that moment forward, I have had people that I knew back in the 60s. I've had people who had experiences with him back in the 60s who have private messaged me on Facebook to share their stories, people I didn't know. I have had more people. I had a friend who was he was an actor, a director, a producer. I'd done casting director workshops with him, known him for years. The day he was diagnosed with colon cancer that had already gone to his liver, he called me, said, I've got a Cosby story for you. He said, when I was a starving actor, I was a desk clerk at the Beverly Hilton. He said when Camille Cosby was at Cedars delivering one of their babies, Cosby took a suite of rooms at the Hilton. And he said there was a steady stream of hookers, women going into his suite, non-stop. I said, can you write that out and I can get it to an attorney? And he said, I've got other things going on right now. And he died, unfortunately, this past 22nd of May.
But it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise us, does it?
Oh, no. There's stories. I've got 1 million stories already that people have sent to me that I've had them just write up and send to me. People who said, I was in group therapy. I can't really talk about it, but there was a girl from NBC who was freaking out and nervous and da-da-da. And then all of a sudden she just disappeared from our group.
Victoria.
She worked on his show. I mean, it's just, nonstop stories like that.
And like I said, I'm sure there are hundreds, my God, if not thousands of others who haven't come out or don't have the ability to come out. Victoria, what can people do for you and for, and this is not just pertaining to the victims of Bill Cosby, but the victims of sexual assault, of the person who goes out on that first date or a blind date or whatever, and then suffers from something as traumatic as this. What can people do? Is there an organization that you're involved with that they can support? Please let us know. Please give out any of that information now to our listeners.
Absolutely. First, there are two organizations that I'm involved with currently. One is the abolish the statute of limitations on rape and sexual assault in California. There are others of our survivors who are doing that right now in other states. Beth Tillo, blanking on her entire name, she was one of Cosby's victims. She has abolished the statute of limitations on rape and sexual assault in Colorado. That's what she's been working on where she lives. Lisa Lotta Lublin and her husband, Benjamin, they have gotten the state legislature to extend the statute of limitations on rape and sexual assault in Nevada from 4 years to 20 years. They're working on complete abolishment. I am working in California with a group here. We are going up to Sacramento. We will be presenting our bill through San Bernardino County's Senator Connie Leyva, Justice for Victims of Sexual Assault bill. And we are trying to abolish the statute in California, which is now at 10 years. And as you know, it is the most underreported crime. And additionally, people can't talk about it. Victims cannot talk about it through humiliation, shame, blame, victim blaming, re-victimization, all of that, fear. And so by the time you finally find your voice, finally find the courage to come forward, the statute of limitations is over. And so therefore, there is no consequence to the rapist who can continue to go and continue on his merry path.
There should never be a limitation. There should never be.
There should not.
There should never be. You know why? Because the trauma that is inflicted upon a person is and people do not realize the self-harm that somebody goes through, the suffering, the absolute anguish, not only obviously, yes, of course, physical, but the mental anguish and the post-traumatic stress that is placed upon that person. There should never be a statute of limitations. And I will do all that I can through this show. I'm hoping that our listeners will also, is there a Facebook support page or a website that they should go to that you can recommend that they go to support?
Yes, absolutely. There are several. There is the Abolish the Statute of Limitations Facebook page there on sexual assault, and then there is the End Rape SOL. And we have that's our group, hashtag End Rape SOL, hashtag CA. That way, anybody at any state can substitute the initials for their state after the second hashtag. We need to get this out throughout the nation. Civilized countries, Canada, the UK, they do not have any statute of limitations on rape and sexual assault.
Doesn't that tell you something?
And additionally, there are 16 states in the deep south who have no statute of limitations on rape and sexual assault. We might think that is because they are more enlightened, but no, it has a racist undercurrent. Think about it. Now, I'm also involved. I don't want to get off the phone with you without telling you about PAVE Hollywood, which is very, very critical to our movement. PAVE Hollywood, promoting awareness, victim empowerment. Angela Rose is the founder. She's back in D.C. We are attempting to change the conversation and raise awareness about sexual harassment and assault and this kind of thing with the megastars in Hollywood. And trying to change that in the film industry by establishing perhaps teach-ins, helping young actors and actresses come forward and also learn how to identify what sexual harassment includes, how to stand up to it, maybe buzz phrases, buzzwords that you can use, because if we don't have those things on the tip of our tongues, quite often we're caught off guard because these conditions always come up when we're least on our guard. They catch us off guard, and therefore you can't think of anything to say. All of a sudden it's like, But if we can start having teach-ins and training people have that comeback, that one-liner on the tip of your tongue, and then have hotlines and know who to go to and who to report to and who to say, you will not keep me from working in this town again just because I have brushed you off. You know, these are the kinds of threats, the intimidation, the underlying current in show business that if you don't put out, you're not going to get anywhere. And it's so invasive. It is so invasive, and we need to change the conversation. We need to raise awareness, and we need to put a damn stop to it. And people need to stop being afraid to speak out. And it's not just women, it's men too.
Exactly.
We need to teach the male victims to speak out, not be afraid, but we also need to teach the young men coming up not to rape, that it's not okay. No means no. And it doesn't have to even be the word. It has to be the attitude. You know, just because you don't immediately go along with somebody putting moves on you, that does not give them permission to reach forward and grab the front of your shirt and rip it off or something, or throw you down and think this is some kind of, 1950s Sam Spade movie, It's not. We have the right to walk through a room naked and not be touched unless we ask for it. And it's not their perception of did we ask for it. It's our invitation.
Exactly.
Clear and simple.
Exactly. Victoria, Valentino, oh, I love you so much. I do. I'm.
Oh, thank you, Christine.
I am so. I'm so honored to know you, and I will do everything that I can through this show and through social media to. I know I can't take away any of your pain, and I know I can't take away any of the pain that these women have endured by this particular man, or all of our sisters and brothers out there who have been assaulted and raped from other people in their lives that are not as famous as Mr. Bill Cosby. But I will do everything that I possibly can, and I hope I'm encouraging all of our listeners to do the same in their community and for this country, and to support women like you when they do come out. So again, I just want to thank you so very much, Victoria, for being with me this hour, and for sharing your story with us. I think it's going to change a lot of lives, and it's going to help a lot of people. So thank you.
And thank you so much, Christine, for giving me the time on your show and telling not my story but our story. Films are coming out, Invisible Scars, about childhood and sexual assault by parents. The Hunting Ground, about rape on college campuses. The Spotlight, the film about rape in the Catholic Church. You see, it's coming to a head. We are a movement now. We are speaking out. The silence is broken. We are standing in our truth, and nobody can shut us up now. You can't unring a bell.
Oh, thank you so very much, Victoria.
Thank you.
You are an angel. You are an angel. Everyone, thank you so very much for listening this hour. And until next week, please always, of course, think outside the box and take action, please. Victoria, thank you again so much for being with me today.
Thank you for having me.